everybody. Just wanted to share about my teacher goals and teacher reflections for the spring of 2023. This year, I'm teaching middle school self-contained special education classroom. The theoretical frameworks that I wanted to explore are Bruce Tuckman's theory of group development, Robert Marzano's teacher evaluation criteria, which is new to me. I don't even know if he had that theory when I was in grad school. Lev Vygotsky, zones of proximal development, and disruptive sense of agency, which I'm still learning about and researching as a frame of reference. So Bruce Tuckman talked about stages of group development, and those stages are forming, which agreed upon a goal and begins to tackle the task. So the group forms, they agree on the goal, and begin to tackle the task. Storming is the next phase or stage, and there's conflict within the team development and gaining trust, hierarchy of the group, working styles. Norming is when when I can't talk, it's the end of the school day, when team members accept each other as they are and keep working towards the goal. Performing is when group norms and rules are established. A change of leadership may cause a group to revert to a storming. And then we have adjourn, which is the ending of that group. So I've been teaching for 3 years online, and that's my phone. I've been teaching for 3 years online. A little bit about me. I had a little bit of agoraphobia and anxiety about going out during COVID. We lost some loved ones to that, and so was a little nervous about going back into the classroom. I decided to go back into the classroom January 2023, and there's a picture of my classroom. It looks very bright with the bright lights up on top, fluorescent lights. January 2023, we talked about rules, expectations, doing some get to know you activities, talking about birthdays. We also did a house tree person assessment, which is an art therapy assessment. So a little bit about my student demographics. We have, I have 11 students. One's learning disabled. We have one that's speech and language impaired. Another student who is emotionally impaired, ADHD and autism. Another one who is emotionally impaired. Actually, 4 students who are emotionally impaired. Another learning disabled student with a learning disability. One student who is cognitively impaired. Let's see, let me look at that again because I was looking at the file again. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me make this bigger. 5 students who are emotionally impaired out of 11. Okay, and then they also have secondary disabilities. Some of the students, for example, one student has oppositional defiant disorder, and his secondary disability is ADHD. And then we have one student who has autism, and his secondary disability is speech and language and OT services. He gets OT services as well. So let's learn a little bit more about Robert Marzano. He has a framework to measure teacher effectiveness, which contains 4 domains: standards-based planning, standards-based instruction, conditions for learning, and professional responsibilities. So this is the first year I've done a teacher goal reflection like I have. Usually they just have a rubric and check it. So this is interesting. Because I'm still growing and learning. Hence, that's one of the reasons why I'm recording this. Because sometimes if I teach about a subject or present, I learn a little bit more along the way, and it kind of helps break a little bit of that writer's block. Initial self-reflection, establishing priority growth needs, reflecting on teachers or teaching. Excuse me. Reflection questions. What do I want to change about my instruction that will effectively impact student learning? So I answered this back in March, which was my second month with the school district. And so I put started middle school in the middle of the year. My first priority is getting to know my students and their needs. What personal learning is necessary to make that change? The personal learning that is necessary is learn about my students and why they had 3 previous teachers before me this school year. Currently conducting formative assessment to guide instruction. So every unit, I do a lot of formative assessments and then scaffold and differentiate learning accordingly. Okay, we talked about Robert Marzano. Also, one of the goals that one of the goals that I'm going to talk about is my second goal, which relates connecting with prior knowledge. And Marzano says when presenting new content, teachers should be aware of how students interact with new content. So I really love KWLs because you can totally learn a lot. So part B of my evaluation is conducting priority growth needs to professional growth and planning. Okay, so the first goal, growth goal that I have is by June 2023, my first teacher goal is to increase my students' reading level by at least a half year's growth as measured by NWEA scores. The strategies or elements that I will focus on in order to accomplish this goal is targeting instruction based upon Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. Teacher actions, contact the curriculum director at the main office and obtain language arts books at my students' reading levels, their Lexile levels, small group reading instruction, and looking at reading scores, tracking reading scores along the way. Let's see. Got that one, same slide. All right, so let's talk about Vygotsky's zones of proximal development in reading. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian psychologist known for his zones of proximal development and social cultural theory, circa 1920s. He researched and developed a series throughout his career. The zones of proximal development are the gaps between what the learner can do without assistance and what the learner can do with the adult direction and collaboration with more capable peers. Teacher notes, exploring the connections between Vygotsky's ZPD, also zones of proximal development, and reading Lexile as measured by, again, the Northwest Evaluation Association and WEA assessment, which will guide reading and instruction. And the evidence, of course, is the NWEA scores. So I looked at the scores, and what I noticed is that all but 3 of my students are below 10%. And then we have another student who's at 10%, 12%, and 13% nationwide. So they're all falling in that the red stop sign zone, like, hey, pay attention to meeting the needs of these students. Also, we had one student who refused to test. So all of my students are altogether, the 10 students who did test are below 21% um, as compared with the national average. The class average RIT score is 189.9, and they're all below the national average. Median percentile 4%. And this is an 8th grade class. One of the things that I learned about NWA that I thought was cool is that it gives you the reading categories, instructional areas for our IT scores, which include the following: literary text, language, craft, structure, information text, key ideas and details, literary text, key ideas and details, informational text, language, craft, structure, and vocabulary acquisition and use. All right, and so I looked at the NWEA scores. Also, there's a Lexile there. So what I noticed, unfortunately, is 6 of my 10 students who took the NWEA showed rapid guessing, which affected the trajectory of the scores. And you'll see a lot of score decreasing. Also, we had one student who's new to the school district and she showed growth, so that was good. And another thing that I like about NWEA is that it shows you their developmental readiness skills or zone of proximal development. For example, this student says she is ready to locate details in informational text. And then I have a slide of my reading groups. I picked these reading groups based on reading level as well as peer compatibility and behavior for optimizing learning in small group. So did I meet that goal? Not exactly. I'm not sure if the NWEA alone would be a good measure to measure half year's growth. I'm going to go ahead and look at the Acadience scores again and graph those. I've had some of my students graphing those, doing bar charts on their fluency. So I want to analyze that data again. According to the NWEA, they did not meet that goal, but I think according to different data, we'll see that they have met that goal. And the data that I'm going to look at next again is to comb the data from our skills check. So I'm going to go ahead and check that to see if I met that goal. So next time, if I have a goal related to scores, I'm going to definitely, what I learned is definitely add more than one criteria to measure for success. Part B, connecting priority growth needs to professional growth planning. Goal number 2, from now on until the end of the school year, before beginning any unit, I will assess my students' prior knowledge using KWL charts and other pre-reading strategies. So what elements and strategies will I focus on in order to accomplish my goal? I'll build upon my students' prior knowledge, build upon my students' interest in connecting new knowledge with prior knowledge. Teacher actions evidence. I've been taking snapshots of learning, for example, KWLs that my students and I complete together under the dot cam, and that's projected upon the whiteboard. And you'll see in the slide, you'll see KWL for ancient Rome, for our social studies unit. So the K again stands for what you know, the W is what you wonder, and the L is for what you learned. There we have a KWL for AI. We did a poetry project with AI. And so I thought it was pretty interesting, some of the stuff the questions that my students raised about AI. Very interesting. For example, one says, "Does AI work for the government?" I thought that was interesting. Is Roblox AI? What is the AI barrier? I was like, tell me more. What do you mean by that? So lots of good questions there. And then the next slide, you'll see we had a space poetry unit where I was encouraging my students to use AI as a writing tool. Our theme that we chose as a whole group was space. Then students picked an area related to space to write a poem about using AI as an editing tool. There's a web graphic organizer showing student choices. So we have a student who picked galaxies, black holes, multiverse. Uh, Apparently, there's a robot game that is associated with space. Asteroids, I picked that one because I was thinking about the asteroids game. Constellations, the Milky Way, Omniverse, lots of interesting choices. There you go. On the next slide, we have a KWL about dinosaurs and lots of good questions there as well. Um, like, for example, how long was a dinosaur's lifespan? How many teeth do they have? How fast could they run? All right. So let me flip through some of these slides. For teacher evidence, I put some slides. Domain 4 talks about participating in district and school-wide school initiatives. The teacher participates in staff development opportunities, and there's a picture of me and my colleague. My colleague and I, we were building a noodle. We were crafting a noodle building or noodle tower from a STEM challenge, which was fun. So that is a picture of that. We see some artwork from our students. Did a Picasso. We did a Picasso unit, and students created painting collages of musical instruments. Also, teacher and student evidence for February, March, and April. We hosted a social for grade 6 and 7th grade to join us here in the 8th grade classroom. Here's a picture of the brownies that I made for March, the March social to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Students practice social skills with board games. This is a picture from our April social. Our 8th graders were adding candy to the Easter eggs as a treat for our 6th and 7th grade friends. Here's a slide of our daily schedule there. Also, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We learned about the psychology of perception and Dr. Herman Rorschach's ink blot assessment. That was super duper fun. I loved hearing what the kids noticed, and I had them point that out at the whiteboard as well because I projected it. Super fun, very creative. I loved it when kids notice things that other kids that, or even that I didn't notice, were like, "Wow, I never even saw that before." So it really honed in uh, how we all have different perceptions of things. Teacher student evidence. Oh, okay. April. I should have put that slide ahead of me. But anyways, April is poetry month. We learned about making the different types of poetry. Here's a demo of magazine poetry projected from the doc cam. And what I did is I like to kind of mix it up and put like different pictures together that normally wouldn't be together. So you'll see that ice cream cone and a whole big foliage of leaves on top. So I thought that was interesting. And so I wrote a poem about that. Also, our students were learning about financial literacy, and we played that life board game as one way to practice these skills. Also, my colleague, Mrs. Lockwood, had a reality store that was really, really awesome, and we learned a lot and had fun that day. And that was in the gym with local businesses. Here's a slide from our Mondrian unit, and we connected it with geometry. With parallel lines and perpendicular lines. Also, we talked about primary colors, yellow, red, blue. Thankfully, I got a grant to buy some art and music supplies, and you'll see one of my students there with the loom, and she's learning how to weave. Here's another student of ours. She is labeling the parts of a ukulele, and we got that ukulele there. And so, what the kids were learning were research skills, labeling, practicing their handwriting, and of course, the joy of music. We have some of our students there again painting and working on their geometry Mondrian project. Here is another student evidence piece, a student showing her graphing skills through pixel art. And so there's student choice and interest. She loves Kermit the Frog, and who doesn't? And so she picked Kermit the Frog, and we have the skills that were gleaned from this project were math, graphing, coordinate skills, counting, and spatial reasoning skills. There we have a student, the next slide, weaving a flower, and she made a beautiful flower, and that helps with fine motor skills as well as calming uh, strategies as well. There we have a student playing the xylophone, and he really enjoyed that. This is a student that doesn't participate too much, but it was really awesome to see him come up and play that xylophone, and he'll play that xylophone often. There we have, I did a project with our students called the Genius Project, and I asked the kids to pick their topic of choice and research that, and then they're going to present it. Some of our students have already finished that. One of my students with autism decided to study the origin of video games. So she created an arcade machine out of cardboard. There's a coin slot, and fellow students could pick a pocket, which had an essay about the origin of that video game. And the choices were as follows: Pac-Man, Frogger, Asteroids, Mario Brothers, to name a few. We also, continuing back to that space unit, we learned about constellations, and one of our students did the activity and painted constellations and labeled them. Also, she created a tally mark for everyone in the classroom, picking our birthdays and where we would fall and which constellation falls around our birthday. Here's a demo for science class connecting student interest to curriculum. We did a drawing and labeling of the parts of a flower. And you'll see an example here from one of our wonderful students. And going back to poetry again, we, of course, implement guided language acquisition design, GLAD strategies. This one again is a collage poem. This is a different one. This is a demo that I made, and here is the poem. I called it Space Fog. It's a picture from the dot cam. Space fog. There's a mustard seed in my yellow coat, snug, a nebula yet to be. And the images of a yellow coat, a nebula, a purple flower, and it kind of looks like marbleized paper. It's painted paper, and it looks like a big wave. And there you see it projected onto the whiteboard. Also for math, we did a table team activity creating a chess and checkerboard with 8x8 grid. Skills learned were teamwork, multiplication, measurement, fine motor skills, turn taking, and social skills. And they painted their check I can't talk today, chess or checkerboard with that. You'll see that example from one of our table teams, and they did a fantastic job. It's really beautiful. And we learned about the chess pieces and the rules of chess for critical thinking. And so I have a whole bunch more slides, but I'm going to go ahead and stop there because I got to go home and walk our puppy boy. And that is a little bit about my teacher reflection, and I'll keep on working on that as we go. All right. Thanks, guys. Let's see. Where did that go? Have a great afternoon. Bye.